Eclipsis has a lot of problems. Alting, exploiting, bad player retention, low performance, to name a few. You know what they are. All of them, of course, have their own root causes, but there's a potential solution for a lot of them. Quite unintuitively, I would say that it's paid access. So, what is paid access? What would it do? Essentially, paid access would put Eclipsis behind a paywall. In order to play the game, you would have to pay some amount of Robux. How this fixes alting and exploiting is quite obvious. If the people who were alting and exploiting had to pay every time they wanted to do that, they probably would stop. Visteria, for example, which cost 800 Robux in its alpha days, had only a few exploiters. It was not a problem at all. No one wanted to pay 800 Robux for an alt just to exploit and then lose their progress. It, of course, won't stop all of them, but it will be a big deterrent. And if someone wants to give the developers money just to exploit for a few minutes or hours before they get banned, then so be it. What about the player count? Eclipsis already has only 50 to 300 people playing concurrently at the least and most active times, respectively. How would putting the game behind a paywall help? Well, Eclipsis has terrible player retention. Most people join and then leave during the tutorial or their first match. It's confusing for them to figure out, and they just move on to another game. If players were to pay for the game, they would be a lot more likely to stay and figure it out. How many new players join would plunge, but player retention rates would skyrocket. It might even out, or it might swing to dramatically lower or raise the concurrent player count. It's hard to predict. Retention rates rising because of a paywall isn't just speculation, by the way. There's been some studies on online courses. People who paid for a course were many times more likely to complete it and went through a lot more of it on average than people who got the same course for free. If you pay for something, you're probably not going to abandon it right away. Keep in mind, the biggest reason Eclipsis has so few players is not that too few people join, it's that too few people stay. A few months ago, Eclipsis got on the front page. For a few days, its player count nearly tripled. At peak times, instead of 200 to 300 people playing, it was more than 1,000. On average, it was probably around 800. After Eclipsis was no longer on the front page, those numbers almost immediately dropped back down to normal levels. Tens of thousands, maybe a few 100,000 even, new people joined Eclipsis and decided they weren't going to stay to figure out how it works. What if instead of so many of those people joining, only a few thousand did, and they paid access for the game? Those players would have figured out how to play, and probably would have stayed at rates almost unthinkably higher than the current ones. There are a few important things to be figured out and considered here. Is it fair for free players that have been playing for months or even years to suddenly face a paywall? Is it even good for the game to alienate all these long-time high-ranked players? You could make the game paid access to new players only, but then that's not fair to them. Why did the people that merely joined the game earlier get to play it for free? And you don't have to use the Roblox system. You can make the game free on Roblox and ask users to make a dev product purchase when they join the game. You could let the players play in tutorial or practice without playing. You could add different game modes and put some of them behind a paywall, like the co-op like the multiplayer ones. And look, I would be lying to you if I said I think this would work or is a good idea. Eclipsis is far from being able to adopt something like this, but it is an interesting idea. Thank you for listening.